Good morning. It's Monday in Manhattan. Jared Wassinger here with Jason Hilgers. We had a first go around at this, but we had some technical difficulties. So if you were there with us earlier, sorry, but we're going to rehash some stuff that we talked about a couple minutes ago. Starting off, though, we do want to thank a lot of our crews who've been working outside with the ice event that we had really from Friday all the way through the weekend. We even had some misting going on Sunday, and I know crews were out putting down some salt for the ice, not only on our streets but on our parks and airport and other areas, just so folks could travel safely. So
yeah, we can't thank those folks enough for working hours well beyond 8 to 5 in order to keep it safe for us to travel and access points throughout the community.
We got a city commission work session going on tomorrow. We're going to have a discussion item with our new city commissioners. Our governing body was appointed with our new members. Mark Hattasall and Aaron Esterbrook are our new city commissioners, and they got sworn in on January 7th at that legislative meeting last week. And Yusha Reddy was appointed as mayor by the city commission. So the new governing body is here together, and they're really going to tackle their first item, which is going to be the draft bicycle pedestrian systems master plan. I was telling Jason earlier today that the original one was adopted in 1999, back when I was, I believe, a fifth grader or so. So it's time for a revamp of that. We've been working with the Flint Hills Metropolitan Planning Organization as well as some consultants. We got some grants to really update this plan. So our consultants came in. We formed a steering committee, Jason, of not only city staff, the MPO, but members of the public, and really started hashing out bicycle and pedestrian systems throughout our community. So they developed this draft plan that's available to the public now. We'll post it in the comments section. But the commission's really going to hash that out, look at the recommendations that the consultants have provided in the plan and the steering committee, as well as talk about how to pay for a lot of these improvements, which is really always the sticking point.
Yeah, I think if you're somebody that walks within the community, bikes within the community, this is an opportunity to really look at how the public infrastructure can be enhanced and improved to allow you to get to your destinations quicker, safer, in a manner that be more appealing. We have a lot of infrastructure within the community, a lot of right-of-way. A lot of it is geared towards the vehicle. This will be an opportunity for us to talk about integrating that bicyclist and that pedestrian as they make their way to work, or they're being socially recreational. Just a number of different ways folks within our right-of-way can be accommodated.
Yeah. The draft plan, it outlines really a vision for the community as well as core values from a bike ped system aspect. It also goes in and really maps out every area of the community and where we need to see some improvements to really have better capacity to move bicycles and pedestrians along. It breaks it down in a couple different ways of a do now. These are important aspects from bike lanes and shared paths that we need to do now. A do when, as in, if we're going to be tearing up a certain street because road rehab or something like that, or an expansion, that's when we need to go in and really add certain bicycle ped aspects. And then do if, there's a lot of future projects that could come down the pipeline that we will want to do, and when we do that, and if we ever have the capacity to do that, we really need to. A couple of examples of the do now identification projects. North Manhattan Avenue is a big one, as well as Points Avenue. How can we add more bicycle infrastructure to move more people along those corridors? Those are really within the core of the community. We talk a lot about how many people live within Aggieville. About 30,000 people live within a mile of Aggieville and K-State campus. And there's a lot of people walking and biking to classes, to work, to these districts. So those are two areas that have been identified to really get some more bicycle infrastructure.
Yeah, we have some gaps in the community too for our pedestrians on trails and paths and sidewalks. We identified those in the .25 renewal. We have a dedicated funding stream that'll go towards some of those improvements. A lot of people want to access the linear trail, and it's how do we get people out of our neighborhoods onto the linear trail that can make their way then around the community. We've got a very large section of that completed. It's about filling those gaps and getting people a way to travel by foot, by bicycle around the community. And as you mentioned, K-State's such a big player. Yeah. A lot of students, a lot of faculty, staff living, either adjacent to or around the campus, or parking in and around that area and then wanting to walk or bike in. So there's a lot to address, a lot of different factors. As a university community, we go to other places. We see this as a very prevalent, dominant topic. It keeps coming back up in Manhattan. And at some point, financially, it's a matter of committing dollars to this infrastructure, just as we would for roadways for our vehicles. Accommodating now the pedestrian and the bicycle moving forward will be part of this discussion.
We'll talk about this later with some of the future projects that are on the horizon, but when we do a lot of these planning efforts, it's really creating a sense of place for individuals to move to the community, to stay here. People look at these aspects when they're considering getting a job here, going to school here. They look at the bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure. They look at how easy is it going to be if I live in this neighborhood to get to class or get to work. They want to see those improvements. So it's one of those things that we're going to have to keep using this draft plan. The commission's going to provide feedback to city administration and the consultants about the draft plan. It'll come back here in the next couple months for formal adoption, and then you really need to get going and start coordinating some of these efforts.
It's a good topic to segue into just how do things get done within the community. We have a lot of major initiatives that take time to develop, gain interest. Special interest groups come forward with ideas or thoughts. We get ideas or thoughts that are generated through the community, either through our citizens, through our advisory boards, from the governing body themselves, from staff, from what we see in other communities. The chamber led an effort that really talked about that sense of place and investing in your community in order to become more attractive from an economic development standpoint, a workforce, jobs related standpoint. So it makes a difference how you want to shape your community moving forward. And there are a lot of different ideas out there on what Manhattan looks like today and what it should look like in the future. And major multi-million-dollar initiatives give you some indication of just how aggressive Manhattan can be at certain times. Aggieville, we've identified over $30 million worth of infrastructure improvements we'd like to do in Aggieville.
That was a plan, though, that we started kicking around in 2014, 2015, and then really started going into it with the Aggieville community visioning process in 2016. Correct. So that's a good example of something that we still haven't necessarily seen any upward construction to really create that sense of place in Aggieville, and it takes that long. One of the things that has come up recently is the Kansas Riverfront, developing the riverfront to connect to downtown, Blue Earth Plaza. I was talking to you a couple weeks ago, I remember, about this, and I said, Jason, how long would it take for us to see some type of development for the Kansas Riverfront? And you gave me an answer that, was pretty long term. It would take a long time to do some of that. Doesn't mean we shouldn't start planning on some of those things, though.
And a lot of those projects start as exciting ideas. And people start to dream a little bit in terms of what could happen. What could a place like Midwest Concrete Supply turn into if MCM was relocated and bought out and they agreed to move and the community was provided all that acreage adjacent to our levee to create a riverfront type development? What could that be? People get excited about that. They like to dream and they like to think about it. The reason I told you such a long time, which most people I tell 5 to 7 years, because it takes that long to go from the dreaming stage into, okay, now you got to bring in consultants. Now you got to get community feedback. Now you got to get a financial plan and acquire property and a process identified to what it'll actually take to deliver that type of improvement. There are just countless hours spent with the public, with staff, with the governing body, talking about these initiatives. And you have to make your way then through multiple governing bodies. Like, we just seated 2 new commissioners January 7th.
We got to get them now adept with Aggieville and all the plans and keep that moving forward.
Bring them up to speed on every initiative we've been working on in the last 5 to 7 years to make sure we still have a majority that want to move forward with these ideas and these concepts. We spend a lot of money on consultants who come in and help us develop imagery, concepts, budgets that then start to really bring some of these projects to life. And it takes time. We have to fit these into our normal working projects and programs. Public Works has multi-million-dollar stormwater program, multi-million-dollar water and wastewater programs. Back in Napkin the other day, I asked Rob, what's the value of all the streets in Manhattan? He said $320 million. So every year we have to get out there and maintain our streets to a level that they'll keep their integrity. And some of them are beyond that point where you can insert some maintenance and extend their life. They've lived their life. That's why we had the 0.2 sales tax come on the ballot. There are just a number of items out there that occupy our time, effort, and energy. The direct services that we provide to the community, now fitting in these visions and these ideas and these projects, they have to make their way into that discussion and fit on a calendar for a governing body and the community to embrace. It takes a long time. We're talking already about the parking garage in Aggieville, which we're under design, possibly not started construction until fall of 2020, maybe even spring of 2021. That's a project that's been in the queue now for over 5 years. We've been under design for over 6 months, but we're still at a point where we've got a lot of financial decisions to make as a city, as well as move that construction to a point where final design's complete. Facade has been identified. How that alley between Rally House and the new parking garage will function, and really ready to pull the trigger. It'll take several more months before we're at the point where we can start. You get a lot of feedback from people. Middle school improvements are no different. I think we identified that project 7-8 years ago, and we're finally going to see construction in 2020. We're going to break ground on 4 new gym facilities, 4 gyms at each of the facilities of our middle schools this year. I can remember at a 2016 Manhattan Day, June gathering of my neighborhood. It was 4 to 5 years ago, and I had a neighbor go, "When are we going to build those middle school recreation facilities?" And I said, "It's going to take some time." We hadn't even had the vote yet. We had talked concepts, but it takes time. It just takes time to reach a point where you're actually under construction.
So all these working priorities, not only from an operations perspective, we have all of these facilities, infrastructure, quality of life pieces of our community that we need to maintain and keep up and even expand to an extent. Then we have all of these initiatives and projects that we have, Rob and the Public Works Department, they have, I think, 13 capital improvement phases for their stormwater master plan to carry more stormwaters out of the community. We're working on CIP number 4 or 5, I think just got approved the other night. That's a long-term strategy right there. All of these moving parts, and then you get these visions that we come up. The riverfront, Aggieville. We have folks who want to totally redevelop Arts in the Park and the Larry Norville band shell in City Park. All of these concepts, Plaza West. How do we prioritize and figure out what do we need to do now? What is going to stay on this, I guess you could call it the shelf of being more of a visioning process. And we're going to keep talking about this and maybe have classes at K-State do some designs or let, a lot of the times, the private sector is just spending money to do some of these designs because they feel like it's that important. Yep. How do we kind of make the determination of we need to keep moving forward with this? And this is a good effort and something that we need to do. But right now, our hands are full.
A lot of it can be commission driven. Maintaining itself high on their priority list, on their goals list, as well as staff. Staff has to balance, as you mentioned, the everyday work that occurs within the organization. We have over 400 employees we have to manage, but we also have a $165 million budget that we have to implement. Of that $165 million, There's quite a bit of that. It is dedicated to those major infrastructure approaches throughout the given year. There's a balance there, and again, it's a matter of being aggressive as staff. Usually, we get pulled back. The community will pull us back, or major groups like the chamber will pull us back, or the city commission will pull us back because they feel like we're moving too fast. And that's why it ends up taking 5 or 6 years to really see something through. And I'm not casting fault or blame here. It's just an evolution. It just takes time. You run into issues you didn't anticipate. You run into circumstances and conflicts in every project that you just can't anticipate everything.
And it's something you want to get right, and you want to get as much feedback from the community as possible, because at the end of the day, it's the public dollar, and we're trying to get them the most return that they can and bring more people into the community. So, there's a lot of passion that goes into it, which is why you have people saying, wait a minute, maybe we need to slow down, or maybe have we considered this, or have we considered this angle? So there's a reason it takes a while, but it's for a good reason.
Yeah.
And it probably wouldn't be in the best interest of us to just go gung-ho and then start breaking ground, and then that'd be too difficult.
You have people that come to the table late that have a very strong opinion or passion about the project that can actually turn it a little bit. You have people that were passionate up front, very involved, and then they get busy with their other lives, and they'll circle back after a year or two when all of a sudden now a decision point is being made, and they'll provide their input and feedback. That can also delay or take the project in a different direction. There are so many things along the way that people can lose sight of and get busy and preoccupied with other things. Then when the governing body and the city commission has it for action, it'll generate a whole new surge of information. The parking garage is a good example. There are a ton of decisions to make about that parking garage. The facade itself, how that thing's going to look as 5 stories in our Aggieville district at the corner of North Manhattan and Laramie. The look and the feel as you walk by it, drive by it, see it from a distance is going to be heavily debated.
Yep.
And right now, we've got imagery that involves brick and some signage and some metal. And over the course of the next 3 to 5 months, it'll be heavily debated. And ultimately, the commission will have to make a decision how much they want to spend, what they want it to look like, how it's going to feel for the district and the community. So some major decisions will go into the next 3 to 5 months, and there'll be a lot of public opinion expressed to the city commissioners of just how that product ends up being designed fully and constructed.
Certainly a lot on the horizon, Jason. Happy New Year to everyone. It's 2020. We got a new year and decade upon us with a lot of projects that we're looking to tackle, looking to move forward. So hopefully in 2030 things look a little bit different, and we'll have made some progress, and people are really satisfied with a lot that goes on. Vivian, we got a question?
It's a question. I don't think we've decided this yet, but Darren would like to know how much will it cost to park in the garage, and mentions quite rightly that it is going to be controversial, that part.
No question, and it is.
I'll let Jason.
It's a price point that the community is going to have to embrace. There are costs associated, obviously, with building the garage. You have a $10 to $12 million facility. To operate the garage with any type of control will generate its own set of expenses. The parking management plan that we end up adopting in Aggieville potentially could also have its own set of costs and expenses. How you manage that area around the garage is impactful. When you think about K-State and the way they manage their parking, the garage has its own set of costs and fees to access, use. You can be a faculty, staff, you can buy a permanent pass in that thing, you can park for $1.50 an hour. But then everything around the garage is also heavily regulated on campus. So the garage becomes almost a cheaper alternative to some to use versus buying a pass to park anywhere else on campus. It depends on how much time you're going to spend at campus on a weekly basis for 4 months or a semester. So you do your own calculation and your own math. are we going to approach the garage in Aggieville in a similar manner? Meaning, you're going to have to pay to park in Aggieville or around Aggieville in order for your garage to actually start charging. If the garage is the only thing you're charging people to use and it's free to park everywhere around the garage, I think you're going to have a hard time generating revenue and convincing people to park in Aggieville in that garage unless you have a high use event. Game day weekend, you might find that garage to be full during that event. And that may be a strategy, the only time you actually charge for parking. You're going to generate minimal revenue, but your oversight may be minimal as well. We've seen our experiences downtown at 3rd and Fort Riley. We don't charge for that garage. We have a lot of criminal activity that takes place in that garage because we don't charge. It's a free access thing. Things happen on the top level. Things happen on the 3rd and 4th level that quite honestly the police have approached us about in terms of, hey, it may make sense to start charging to get into this facility so you can help control some of the crime that does occur. So cameras, access points, how much you charge, all factor into this revenue and expense type of approach, but also behavior and what you want to manage and regulate within the district. The governing body has an array of decisions, a lot of decisions to make as it pertains to Aggieville parking. We don't have the price figured out yet, but there will be a lot of options for the commission to consider. I think a lot of it is going to be cost recovery. I think they're going to want to put some money into this, but they're going to want to see a little bit of return. Yep. So I could see them expanding parking management and the cost for parking well beyond just the parking garage.
Is it safe to say, though, Jason, so we hired Walker Consultants. They're actually designing the garage. They've designed parking garages all over the country. They also have developed a lot of parking management plans. They're developing a plan for us now. Is it safe to say that the cost is going to fluctuate and change over the next 5 years? From the initial construction to once we start doing changes in streetscape that may eliminate certain parking. So over time, that inventory is going to change really throughout Aggieville. It could maybe, like you said, change during time of day or event. We have a lot of different people going to Aggieville. We have the visitors that who are going to eat in the shops, visit offices. We have the employees though that also are there, and there's differences in how you treat those. I know K-State does things like that too, where you can have priority parking in a garage or something like that, but maybe it's on the top floor for your employees and generating that type of revenue.
I think the evolution of the district as well could change the way we approach the garage. If the vision of Aggieville actually materializes and we see more businesses, more residential, more office, the way we treat that garage and how we treat that resource could absolutely change. It may be a phased approach. If we build a garage and the same inventory of businesses and the same inventory of activity occur in the first year or two, perhaps that approach is different than when we start to see construction and more business and more people coming into Aggieville on a daily basis. So the resource will be there, the mechanism will be there, maybe the philosophy changes over time. And we've even had commissioners express, we don't want to cause a lot of waves up front. We don't want to change behaviors to where people aren't going to Aggieville to pick up their donuts or drop off their dry cleaning or stopping in to have a bite to eat. So the activity that we all are very familiar with today may not be the activity in 5 years. So the approach on parking management may be different in 5 years as well. So we understand that. We want to be flexible. A lot of the infrastructure and mechanisms, controls and cameras and safety we'll address up front, but some of that from a cost perspective may be phased in over time.
A lot to discuss over the next year. A calendar of kind of some events that we're going to be taking place with the City Commission to really talk about a lot of these things. Not this Tuesday, but next Tuesday, the 21st, we're having a discussion item during the legislative meeting. The City Manager's Office, as well as all of our departments, are really going to be giving our City Commission an overview of 2019 and what occurred, as well as in operations and capital improvement projects that's going to happen this year, just to give them a feel for what's in store, as well as future requests and a lot of these things that are going to be coming forth for the commission. That following week, we're going to set a date for our City Commission goal setting retreat. That's going to give all our new commissioners and existing commissioners an opportunity to get together and really give us their opinion about what they want to see, what are their priorities for the community and for the organization. So we'll be rolling those out over the next couple weeks. So if you're following the calendar, we'll be sure to let you know those dates and those conversations that are going to happen. I did mention, or forget to mention, the 28th. So in between the 21st and then near the end of January, when we do our City Commissioner retreat, we're going to have a work session on January 28th to talk about those 6 projects from the 0.3 sales tax initiative that failed and how we're going to look to alternative funding sources. So that'll be a big discussion too.
Chamber retreat this weekend as well. So Friday in the afternoon, Saturday in the morning. I will mention, just in the past, it has been a place where some of these major initiatives and projects have surfaced and started. Some of them originated there.
Can you talk a little bit about the chamber retreat for those who are unfamiliar with it? I think it's an interesting concept that maybe a lot of people don't know about, that may be interested in the future to really start giving their opinion about some of those visions.
Chamber members, as well as all the taxing jurisdictions, are well represented at this. It's grown really to be more of a regional approach in the last decade or so. But we do all convene. Been at Overland Park in the past. It's at Olathe this year. It's an opportunity for us to get updates on where Fort Riley is at, where each community is at from an economic development standpoint. There's a speaker coming this year that talks more about cities and where they're headed in the future, and how some have planned better than others, and what lessons and tidbits can we pick up from other communities moving forward. So it's an opportunity, it's an educational opportunity, it's a networking opportunity. I can go back all the way to 2000, 2001. That's how long I've been attending, and there have just been some really exciting things that we've done over the last 20 years that were talked about at the retreat.
Downtown would probably be a good example of folks probably started having a visioning process of, hey, we need to redevelop downtown. Now you walk down Points and in Blue Earth, and it's amazing, and it's a great asset for the community. So a lot of those conversations are hopefully going to keep happening, I guess, this weekend at the retreat.
Our middle school gymnasiums were also talked about at the chamber retreat. So it's an opportunity for folks to get together, take a day out of their work and meet and share ideas and thoughts.
We'll wrap up, but again, new year, new decade. So if you have any comments or questions about what's going on, what are some future projects or initiatives that you're wondering about and want to hear some feedback from the city on where they're at, please feel free to make a comment in the comment section and we'll tackle it next week. Have a good one.
Thank you.